Hey guys, today I'm going to be doing a review. It's a long-term review. I've had quite a few years with the Chameleon and a little over a year and a half-ish with the Banyan, and I want to give you guys my personal view of how the hammocks stack up one with another, which one's going to be best for you. If you're looking for information on the Chameleon, the Banyan, or just bridge hammocks versus gathered end hammocks in general, stay tuned and we'll get right into it. Let's go. Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Excited about this video. It's well overdue. I've had the Chameleon and the Banyan for a couple years now, and I have used them both in the winter, summer, spring. I have used them backpacking, just traditional camping. I've used them even the Banyan in a hot tent. So I've had them in all sorts of different scenarios, and I wanted to really get a good a comparison video out there between the two. All right, guys, that's the Dutchware Chameleon right there. So this is a gathered end style hammock. It's got a couple key features that I just want to share with you guys real quick. So this is the fabric's a 1.0 hex, and this fabric's definitely one of my favorite style fabrics. They make it in a 1.6. They make it in a couple others. But that's totally dependent on what you want to get. I personally like the 1.0 because it is lighter, and I do like that a little bit of stretch in there. The other thing that Dutch is known for is this, what he calls a sidecar for storage. And what's nice about that is it actually integrates with the bug net. So you just close that up, and now your stuff's inside of your bug net. Another thing for storage-wise is you can get a ridgeline organizer, and then he also sells something called a peak. It's not in here, but it would go right up inside here, and it's just this almost like another bug net where you can store stuff up in there. He's got all sorts of things that you can kind of customize this with, which is what the Chameleon's all about, is customizing, being able to change it to suit your needs. A big bonus is you can change this material out for what's called a top cover for winter. I'm sure you've seen that in some of my videos. It has, you know, a breathalyzer, which is basically something that will come down something that comes down right here, and it keeps all your breath from coming down and crystallizing on your down quilt. Because once the down gets wet, after that frost unfreezes from your body heat, it will seep in to your down, and then you'll get cold because it stops losing its insulative value. So I do like the breathalyzer that he sells as well. The other thing that's kind of nice, and I'm not using it right now, but you got these hooks, and these hooks basically keep the underquilt where you want it. So he's got them on both sides here, so that way you can make sure your foot and your shoulder both have the down where you want it when you're laying diagonally. So those are some of the key features, some of the reasons you would get the Chameleon. Again, this is just a quick overview of the Chameleon because I think there's enough info out there if you want to get a real review on it. But I personally can tell you I love this hammock. That much I can tell you. So let's take a quick look at the Banyan, and I'll show you what that's all about. All right, guys, got my bridge hammock set up by Dutch. This is the head end right here, red for head, and yeah, it's a real nice hammock. Definitely enjoyed being on it. It does have a couple pros and a couple cons, and I just want to go over a few of those real quick with you. So one big pro is the setup. This thing is easy. You just want it to be flat. Maybe this end could be an inch or two higher than your head end in order to make it so you don't slide this way. You just always kind of slide this way if you're going to slide at all. And because this end is actually wider than this end, you want to be closer to this end than that one. This hammock's great for shoulder squeeze issues. I know some people have complained about it, but I really have not had any shoulder squeeze. Not much anyway. And I know that can be a big problem in some of the gathered end styles. It's made out of 1.6 hex. And so it's just a touch heavier than my gathered end hammock, but not by much, maybe 1.5 ounces, I think. I'll go over that in a little while, all the weights, but the fabric feels excellent on you. Doesn't have too much stretch, but it has just enough, and you don't need a ton of stretch at all in this style hammock. The bridge style hammock, you kind of want to be just a little bit firmer, in my opinion, and so the 1.6 is actually perfect for me. I've not had any problems with that fabric. The other nice thing is actually the setup of the underquilt. Now right now you can see there's a little gap in there, but if you press on this, when you lay in it, it actually seals it up real tight without a single problem. So that's the bottom on top now. I've flipped it over, and yeah, a lot of guys will have issues setting up their underquilt because they'll get holes here or holes here. They get drafts, different things that just make it complicated for a gathered in style, and you don't have that problem here. I have used this setup with a heavier underquilt, both that one and my winter underquilt, and I've never had a single cold spot. It's never had a draft. It's easy. It is a lot easier. You just hook yourself up to these little D-rings here, and then you have the option. What's really nice and what drew me to actually get this hammock to begin with is Dutch has this little, sorry, this is all glue from when I did this, which I'll just tell you right now, you gotta do that to your hammock if you don't want to get holes in it. As you can see, the bar comes through with this. I can't figure out for the life of me why they do this. Dutch, come on. Just come up with a reason or a way that you can have a cover on here that we don't have to jerry-rig something on there. It should just come with the hammock. I mean, nobody wants to poke a hole in their tarp, especially if they got a Cubin fiber tarp. The first time I tried this out, I took Spaguyver's advice and thought if I pitched it out wide, I wouldn't have a problem. But I actually pitched my hammock, my tarp out pretty wide, and this still touched it and poked a hole into it. It was not fun. So I just made my own makeshift little ends there, and this comes in and out. This comes in and out like that. So no problem there. And that kind of fixes that issue, but yeah, that's definitely a big negative. But again, that same positive is, look how easy the setup is. Once you have that dialed in, once you have that figured out, man, the setup's just so easy. I want to point this out right out of the gate, that this particular hammock ripped on me. If you watched my video in the Canada Lakes region, you'll know that was a big problem. However, it made it through, and Dutch did give me a brand new hammock. Unfortunately, I've got to take all this apart, figure out how to put it on the new hammock, because all that I got was the body. So I don't know how to undo the lark's head with everything attached the way it is. I got to figure that out. The other thing is, you do have some capabilities for storage. I really think this is a very necessary attachment right there. But I am also disappointed in that, because this actually, unless you have this super tight, unless you have this rigged perfect, this will come down on you. So just make sure you got everything nice and tight. And I still think that it gets in my way when I'm sleeping in there. Just my opinion. I think that it would be nicer to have, like the Ridge Runner, they've got stuff that comes out the side, and originally Dutch, I had thought, was going to come up with the same thing I have on my Chameleon, my Chameleon has that car on the side, and I thought Dutch was going to do the same thing, but he hasn't gotten it out there yet, so a little disappointed on that as well. So a lot of things were done right. A lot of things I enjoyed about this hammock, but a lot of things I didn't. All right, guys, so that's the two hammocks. I want to go over some of the pros and cons to them. So the first con that you're going to come across with this style hammock going out into the backcountry is the weight. You do have these bars that you're going to have for extra weight. I upgraded mine to Cubin Fiber, and so that significantly helped in that area. So let's just go over the weights that I have for my setup after doing after using them. This was my setup. It was, for the Chameleon, a total of 59.7 ounces, and the Banyan was 67.1 ounces. So about 7.4 ounce difference between the two setups. So really, if you look at it, the hammock itself weighs just a touch more because it's a 1.6 ounce fabric. And so if you have the Chameleon in 1.6 ounce, you're not going to see any difference there, so you can bump that down to, you know, a 6 ounce difference basically. But other than that, it's entirely due to the fact that the Cubin Fiber I can't use with this setup. I mean, I can, but it's very difficult. So what I have is the War Bonnet Superfly for this hammock setup, and so that raised it up a little bit. Now, you can lose some weight on your setup with your underquilt. These underquilts are actually a lot lighter because they don't need to be as big to get that diagonal lay. Whereas this actually fits, and it just fits perfect. And it just comes up on the sides just a little bit. Weight-wise, you're looking at 6-8 ounces. If you're willing to splurge for the Cubin Fiber spreader bars, you'll actually almost be about even for your weight. So that's the weight. Now that we've got that checked off, let's go into some of the pros and cons. The Banyan has a couple pros. The first thing is the hang is easy. There's no worried about, you know, trying to figure out the perfect lay angle. There's no math. It's just you set it up, you know, you want roughly 20 degrees coming down, but even that, you get 15, you get 30. It didn't seem to matter that much to me. The biggest thing was just having it even and level. And other than that, there was no setup issues. Same thing with your underquilt. Like I said, I never had a cold spot, and I never had to change anything. It just was easy. It just is. There's no calf ridge. There's no having to deal with different ways to lay for your shoulder squeeze, or trying to figure out, you know, the best angle for you in there. You just lay in it. You set it up, you lay in it, and you're set. You're going to sleep good. The other big pro with the Banyan is venting in the summer. I found it was way easier to have this just stay on the way it is. I never had to vent this because it was not wrapping around my body too much. I didn't have to worry about getting airflow in here ever. When it was real hot, I would just put my top quilt down at my foot end and just lay out. And it's almost like laying on your bed at home when it's hot. You're good to go. You don't really need that airflow underneath you. You can, if you want, just reach under here and unclip and let your underquilt hang down, and that can get some extra airflow if you want it. But I slept in this in 90 degrees daytime temps. I think it was 75 degrees at night. It was hot in June this year. I believe that was the second trip on the Northville Placid Trail. So check that video out. And I didn't have a single problem with the heat factor at all. And all I did was just sleep on top of my top quilt, and I was good to go. All right, the Banyan also has a couple negatives. One, the most important one is obviously the tear that happened. And there's been other gear failures from other people. Somebody said that if you use the spreader bars that you get from Dutch, somebody had one of those break on them, and that's definitely a big cause for concern. I don't know what's going on why these things. This is a new hammock, so you're going to have failures. Dutch has already said he's figured out a way to solve the issue with the corner ripping like it happened to me. But I got to give you a knock on that and say you should be sending out an email notification, something to let people know that that's an issue that could happen in the backcountry. People who are relying on this would like to know that's a possibility. Now, granted, he hadn't been making them because he didn't have the materials to make them. So I get, he probably figured it was a known issue, but I didn't know about it. So it would have been nice to have an email to to the people who bought it, so they're aware of the issue. Now, I will say this though: as soon as I contacted Dutch, he was absolutely great. The guys that work over there, they got in touch with me immediately. They sent me out another hammock immediately. There was no question whether I did something wrong. They just made it right as fast as they could. In fact, they sent out the hammock to me before I had to go on my last adventure. So I had the option to take this on the last adventure. Now, because the Northville Placid Trail, I did it in sections. I did 4 sections or 3 sections with this, and then the last section I did with my Chameleon. And I actually wanted to do that largely because of this video. I wanted to remember what it was like to be in my Chameleon after spending a year and a half in the Banyan. The other thing is there's no real place to put your stuff. This works out okay. Let's hope this doesn't break on me. But because I am using the one that's broken. And this is okay, but I'm reaching up. I really like in my Chameleon where I could just grab stuff here. I don't like it all right here. And if I move this up all the way here, what ends up happening is I put stuff in this and it weighs it down. And now it's in my face. So I know a lot of guys, other people have said they like this thing. I really don't. I would much rather have something like on the Ridge Runner. They've got these little side pockets, and I can honestly say that's a better setup than this. All right, guys, so that's the Banyan. Now let's move on to the Chameleon. Chameleon hammock's one of my favorite hammocks. I've had it for a long time, and it was my first hammock. One of the big things that I like about it is actually being able to do breakfast in my hammock in the morning. It's a lot harder to lay down in this style hammock and be able to eat and drink from it. You're not as close to the ground. You can lower this, but you don't really have a good neck or back support. And I often feel like I'm tipping over in order to do anything. And it's just not as comfortable. Also, in the morning time, I really like to sit back sometimes. I'll lay down for a little while. And then as I have a little coffee or a little drink that I usually bring is like an energy drink type thing. And as I'm sipping on that, I'm starting to wake up. I'll transition to wanting to sit back. Now this hammock does not have any back support. You just kind of swing. And so with the gathered end style, I can sit back, put my quilt over my legs, stay nice and warm, and drink my coffee or drink whatever it is I'm drinking, and relax. Which is super helpful because usually I'm up well before the rest of the guys that I camp with. So I like to take my time in the morning and have a nice quiet spot, and it's just more difficult to do in the Banyan. Another couple other things is for the setup, you don't need as far apart trees. You can actually get away with shorter trees with the Chameleon. which is nice. However, just keep in mind, I do still think that a bad setup in this Banyan still is a good lay. Somehow I still get decent sleep on it. All right, another huge pro to the Chameleon is that sidecar. Some people don't use the sidecar. Some people like that peak storage, and that's fine. I actually like the peak storage in the Chameleon because it's up farther away from you. It's not right there in your face. Also, it's easier to use the hang time hook on the Chameleon because it's up higher again. The hang time hook on this ends up coming down and being right in your face. I mean, if you want your phone right in your face when you're using it, great. But for me, I kind of like being able to have it up out of my way. The other pro is you can use a lighter and smaller tarps with the Chameleon. The Chameleon, you can pitch your tarp so much shallower and not so wide because you're not worried about these things, and it's not as wide. So you don't need as much coverage. You can get away with a smaller tarp that's going to give you the same protection from the elements. It also allows you to use a Cubin fiber tarp that's not super huge. So Cubin fiber is expensive. If you want to spend $450 or whatever it is nowadays on a Cubin fiber tarp, you don't want it to break. So you've still got to put these on, protect the sides. All right, let's move on to the Chameleon negatives. Obviously, the number one reason to not have the Chameleon or really any gathered end style hammock is going to be the setup. Not because it's hard necessarily to set it up, but it's hard to set it up correctly. When you have to put time and experiments into getting that perfect lay. You've got a ridge line. You got to have the right distance between your ridge lines so that way you get the right sag or how tight you want that. You want to have the right angle, 30 degrees, or maybe you want it a little less or more, but you're looking for these perfect angles, and if you don't get it right, you have issues like shoulder squeeze, you have issues like calf ridge, you have all sorts of just different things that will happen. Including your underquilt. Just your underquilt having little holes or gaps that are created if you don't know how high you want this. Because sometimes people don't know how to keep it up onto you, how to get rid of the air gaps. All that stuff plays a factor into it. And so for some, it's just something you're not willing to do. You don't want to experiment with it. It's one of the reasons I love hammock camping. Was because I like the fiddle. I like that fiddle factor. And if you're not into the fiddle factor, this is a good option. This is how you get up off the ground. You still get to enjoy that great night's sleep. You got a little extra weight from the poles. And you know what? If that's too much of a deal breaker, then it's too much of a deal breaker. You're not going to want to have a gathered end style if you don't want to put the work into it. So that's the number one issue. And then obviously to tail on to that is comfort in general. Let's say you do get that perfect lay in a hammock. I have had really good sleep in both of these, and I can honestly say I do think that this has the upper hand for comfortability. Even though I can get a really good lay in my gathered end style hammock, my Chameleon, it's just not quite to the same level that this is at. I can twist and turn. Now, I have restless leg syndrome, so I like the ability to twist and turn and just go all over. I can sleep on my stomach in this thing and still get some sleep, which I have done. Because of that, I think that I can get a better sleep here, but not by much. Now that because I've put so much time into the Chameleon, I can say I can get a good angle, I can get a good lay, and I can sleep pretty good. And I do toss and turn, and I'm in a little cocoon, so I stay warm. Nothing really stops me from getting a good night's sleep. But it's just not, I'll give the Banyan the upper hand on that. But if you do the work, you can get pretty close to a perfect lay in your gathered end style. Now, if you don't have the perfect trees, this is more comfortable. This is more comfortable. There's just not enough variance there. I think that this is easier. But then again, the gathered end style, you don't need to have as far away trees. So if you're in a forest where you've got trees that are pretty close, you can get an easier time finding a spot to throw the hammock up. All right, guys, so that's the pros and cons for each. If I'm going to call a winner on this, it's going to be the Chameleon for me. The Banyan actually has just a couple things that just I can't deal with. One of them is just gear failures. I don't like that people have broken their their poles, and I don't like the fact that my hammock ripped. Now, I do believe that that'll get fixed, and I think things will get better for the bridge hammocks. Also, I think some people that get the Ridge Runner might be in better luck. I do believe if you go out and get the Ridge Runner, get the tarp that goes with the Ridge Runner, it's pretty much bomb-proof. It's been used for so long that people aren't having any problems with it. And so maybe that's the route you go if you really want to have a bridge hammock. But the other reasons I like the Chameleon over it, it's going to be that breakfast in bed and the storms. I want to be able to have a nice lightweight tarp that I can pitch real low and tight and know that I'm not going to get wet and I'll be protected from the wind. So those are my big reasons. Leave a comment down below. What do you guys think? Do you like the Banyan? Do you like the Chameleon? Or would you get the Ridge Runner over the Banyan maybe after seeing this video? I don't know. You guys let me know in the comments below, and I'll see you on the next one.